Hey everyone! So today we're going to talk about something called anchored AI. It's this really fascinating framework that's designed to tackle a huge, and I mean huge, problem that's popping up with artificial intelligence. How do we make sure it stays grounded in what's actually true?
But before we get into the solution, let's start with a kind of spooky question. Just think about it for a second. What happens when the AI systems that are pumping out so much content online start to learn from their own stuff? What if they start treating their own made-up fictions as fact?
All right, let's get right into it. The whole issue really starts with how these large language models actually learn. They just hoover up these massive data sets scraped from the entire internet. And while that's an incredible power, it comes with this hidden and frankly fast-growing risk. And here's the core of the problem. The internet is now just flooded with AI-generated text. This means that the new AI models we're building, well, they're being trained on the output of the old AI models. This creates this giant recursive feedback loop. Now, this feedback loop isn't just a weird technical quirk. It leads to some very real, very serious dangers. And the biggest one is a phenomenon that researchers have given a pretty chilling name: model collapse. So what exactly is model collapse? The best way to think about it is like making a photocopy of a photocopy. You know how every time you do it, the image gets a little blurrier, a little more distorted? It loses the sharp details of the original. Well, the exact same thing happens to AI. As it keeps learning from its own synthetic data, it starts to forget real facts. It loses nuance, and its quality just degrades over time. And that leads to this other problem called anchorless drift. Imagine a ship caught in a storm without an anchor. It just gets thrown around by the biggest waves, the strongest currents, right? Well, an AI that's not connected to foundational facts does the same thing. It ends up just amplifying whatever's trending online. Could be misinformation, could be just noise, and it drifts further and further away from verifiable, enduring truths. This really gets to the heart of the matter, the quality of the data. On one hand, you've got our gold standard, human-centric data. We're talking about original research, historical records, stuff that's actually grounded in the real world. But on the other side, you've got this AI-generated data, which can quickly become a minefield of compounded errors and amplified biases, getting more and more detached from reality with every new version. And this is the crucial point. This isn't just some abstract technical issue. It has very real consequences for all of us. You see the quality of the AI itself degrading. We lose trust because the outputs are unreliable. These systems fail to comply with new regulations. And maybe worst of all, you get this dangerous ethical drift where the AI just follows the loudest mob instead of sound, time-tested principles. Okay, but it's not all doom and gloom. And that brings us to the solution we're looking at today, this framework called anchored AI. It's designed specifically to fix this problem by, well, tethering AI to reality. The people behind this framework use this really powerful quote as a kind of metaphor. Just like a cornerstone gives a building a sure foundation, an anchor gives an AI a stable, reliable foundation, preventing it from just collapsing into chaos. So how does it actually do that? Well, the core idea is pretty brilliant in its simplicity. You treat data differently based on how reliable it is. Instead of just dumping everything from the internet into one giant pot, anchored AI carefully sorts and categorizes all that information. And here's what that looks like in practice. The system gives a massive 60% priority to what it calls its anchor corpus. This is the good stuff: peer-reviewed science, historical documents. Now, building and maintaining this corpus is a huge challenge in itself, but it's the foundation. Then, about 35% goes to the ephemeral corpus, things like news, forums. And here's the kicker: AI-generated synthetic text, it's restricted to just 5%. This whole structure forces the AI to learn from our most reliable sources of knowledge first.
Okay, so how does this all come together and actually work as a system? Let's take a quick look at the architecture that makes this whole framework tick.
The framework really has 4 key components. First, it filters and weights the data, like we just saw. Second, it doesn't just read your words, it tries to understand your intent, the why behind what you're asking. Third, it generates answers that are heavily weighted toward those high-quality anchor sources. And, this is huge, it requires citations. And finally, it actively sniffs out and downweights synthetic data to stop that model collapse we were talking about. Now, a concept that makes this all possible is something called provenance. It's a simple but incredibly powerful idea. you should always be able to trace information back to where it originally came from. It builds accountability right into the system's DNA. Think of it like this. Every single answer the AI gives you comes with what's basically a digital receipt. And this receipt uses secure, verifiable tech to prove exactly which peer-reviewed paper or historical document that piece of information came from. For building trust, this is an absolute game changer. So this all sounds really cool in theory, right? But why does any of this matter for us in the real world? Let's look at a few places where this kind of trustworthy AI could make a massive difference. Take healthcare, for example. An anchored AI would be grounded in peer-reviewed medical journals and actual clinical studies. It would be specifically designed to reject advice from some random health blog, or even scarier, its own made-up hallucinations. I mean, this is about safety and reliability where it truly matters most. Or what about education? An AI tutor for your kid would base its explanations on verified textbooks and the actual school curriculum, not on some anonymous and possibly totally wrong answer it found on a public forum. It makes sure that learning is being built on a solid, factual foundation. And you can imagine in really sensitive areas like law or public policy, you could anchor AI systems to foundational legal documents, like a constitution and established case law. This would help prevent the system from drifting based on shifting political winds and make sure it stays grounded in principle. So, at the end of the day, the big takeaway here is that anchored AI isn't just a single product. It's a blueprint. It's a set of principles and a way of designing AI that is stable, transparent, and something we can actually fundamentally trust. And that really leaves us with one last massive question to think about. As these incredibly powerful systems get more and more woven into our lives, the question isn't just if we should anchor them, but what we choose as our anchors. As AI continues to shape our world, what are the truths we should be anchoring it to?